His methods have made him the center of controversy. In some white circles, he is considered politically incorrect. And some black circles, he has been called an Uncle Tom. Yet author Daryl Davis, who has attended KKK rallies and set up surprise meetings with Klan leaders, challenges the skeptics by saying, quote, "I have Klan robes and hoods given to me voluntarily by members who have quit the Klan. That's what I've done to improve race relations." How many robes and hoods have you received as a result of your methods? The Aware Show starts right now.
This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Celeste Evans, filling in for Dee Dee Sharp. Today, the Aware Show gets up close and personal as I go one-on-one and profile Daryl Davis, author of Clandestine Relationships, A Black Man's Odyssey in the Ku Klux Klan. Now, Mr. Davis has received critical acclaim for his book and also his work in race relations from many respected sources, including CNN, CNBC, Good Morning America, The Learning Channel, National Public Radio, and many more. Daryl Davis, welcome to Aware.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
Now, you are a musician.
That's correct.
And you received your degree from Howard University in jazz.
Right.
Okay. And you have your own band.
I do.
And you've played with many famous people.
I have.
How does a musician go from playing music to writing a book about the Klan?
Well, you know, as a musician traveling, you meet many, many different people from all walks of life. Mm-hmm. And I had a very interesting encounter one time. Back in the early 1980s, I was playing in a country western band. Country music had made a resurgence. So I joined a country band. I was the only black guy in the band. And consequently, the only black guy in many of the places where we played. We were playing in a truck stop bar up in Frederick, Maryland called the Silver Dollar Lounge. And I just come off the bandstand after the first set on break, walking across the dance floor to go sit down with my bandmates. And this white gentleman got up from his table, walked across the dance floor, and put his arm around my shoulder from behind. And I stopped to see who's touching me, and he says, "I really like your all's music. You know, I've seen this here band before, but I've never seen you before. Where'd you come from?" And I explained to the gentleman, you know, I just joined the band a few months prior. He says, "You know, this is the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." And I was kind of taken aback. I was naive. You know, where's this guy coming from? Doesn't he know? And I said to him, I said, "Well, where do you think Jerry Lee Lewis learned how to play?" And he says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, Jerry Lee learned from the same place I did. You know, black blues and boogie-woogie piano players." The guy didn't believe me. I explained to the man, I've known Jerry Lee Lewis personally. He's a friend of mine since I was 13 years old. He didn't buy it, but he wanted to buy me a drink. I don't drink, but I went back to his table to have a cranberry juice with him. And as I was doing so, he says, "You know, this is the first time I ever sat down with a black man and had a drink." Now, at the time, I was 25 years old, and he was probably in his mid to late 40s. And I could not fathom how somebody could have existed for 40-some years and never sat down with a black person before, when in my 25 years on the face of this earth, I had sat down literally with thousands of white people, had a beverage, a meal, a conversation.
Right. So was this because he was a member of the Klan?
Well, I didn't know that at the time. I said, "Why?" And he didn't answer me, and I asked him again why. He had a friend sitting next to him who prodded him and said, tell him. I said, "Tell me." And he looked back at me just plainly and said, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." Well, I burst out laughing. While I was laughing, he went in his pocket and handed me his Klan card.
Wow.
I stopped laughing. So that was the beginning of an idea.
Okay. And part of that also came from an experience you had as a teenager when your teacher invited some speakers to come to class.
Yes, as a teenager, when I was in 10th grade, we had a class called the POTC, which stood for Problems of the 20th Century. And our teacher was always inviting speakers to come and speak on controversial subjects. Well, this was 1974, so you could not get away with that today. He had two members of the American Nazi Party come to my school, to this POTC class. And the leader of the American Nazi Party came, a guy named Matt Cole. Matt Cole had taken over for the founder, George Lincoln Rockwell, after Rockwell was murdered by one of his own Nazis. And Matt Cole pointed at me and said, "We're going to ship you back to Africa. And all you Jews out there, you're going back to Israel."
Wow.
And I just sat there looking at the guy.
Okay, what went through you when you heard that? What were you thinking?
I had no idea what this guy was talking about. Like, is he okay? And somebody said, what happens if they don't go? And Matt Cole said, "Oh, they have no choice. If they do not leave voluntarily, they will be exterminated in the upcoming race war." That was the first time I ever heard talk of a race war. What's this guy talking about? The Civil War? That ended in 1865. What's this race war business? Okay. And so from that point forward, I began collecting everything I could find on racism, black supremacy, white supremacy, separatism, anti-Semitism, that kind of thing, and self-educating myself.
Okay. So what is it exactly did you want to find out about the Klan? Did you want to try to change the way they felt about certain groups, or what?
No, I never set out to convert the Klan. You see, up until my book, there had been no books written about the Klan by black authors that interviewed the Klan. There had been 2 written where each author dealt with how he escaped the lynching, one in the 1930s, one in the 1940s. But all the books written on the Klan were by white authors because they had easier access, of course, to interviewing these people. I wanted to get it right from the horse's mouth. How can you hate me when you don't even know me and you know nothing about me? Please tell me. So I wanted that information because I knew, you were not born with that ideology. So where does it come from? Where is it going? How can it be addressed? I was just on a information gathering quest. Okay. And in doing so, I had some surprising results.
Okay. So in your book, you talk about the fact that there are different Klan groups with different beliefs. Some are white supremacists. Some are simply segregationists.
Or separatists.
Separatists.
Right.
Okay. Did you find that surprising?
No, not really. You see, today there is no such thing any longer as the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. There are many Ku Klux Klan groups. They all basically share the same bylaws, the same titles, same ranks, same secret handshake, passwords, etc. They've splintered away from the original Klan group, and then they splinter off of each other. So you have all these splinter groups. But some are more politically minded, where they realize that black people, Jewish people, Asians, Hispanics are all going to be here. None of them are going to be going back to their homeland, so to speak. So while they accept that idea that they are going to be here, they don't accept living with them. So they figure, okay, we're going to be separate but equal, that kind of thing. Those are the white separatists. All right, the white supremacists are the ones who want to enforce that all non-whites get put out of the country. They can either leave voluntarily or they'll be taken out.
Okay. So the separatists, do they like blacks or do they not like blacks?
No, they don't like them at all.
Okay.
But they realize, that it'll be too difficult to turn this into an all-white, nation. So give blacks, that area. Some extreme separatists, like David Duke, for example, has even taken a map of the United States and cordoned it off. Mississippi, Alabama's for the blacks, Idaho, Montana, for the whites, Florida for the Hispanic people, New York for the Jews, that kind of thing.
Okay. So when you interviewed former Klans people and people who are still in active Klans people.
Absolutely.
Why do they say they dislike certain groups of people? What are some of the reasons you heard?
Many different reasons. A Klansman is not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. Some reasons are they feel that they are superior, that other groups do not have the intelligence level. Some, they all are Christian or claim to be Christian-based groups, and they feel that whites are God's children, and non-whites are children of Satan.
And where do they get this from? Do they say that the Bible backs them up?
Yeah. They say the Bible backs it. But you can take the Bible. That's why we have so many different denominations of Christianity. You can take any verse and twist it to suit your own needs, and that's exactly what they do as well. Now, like I said, a Klansman is not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all walks of life, all levels of education. The third grade dropout, all the way to the President of the United States. We've had presidents in the Klan, senators, congressmen, judges, lawyers, doctors, things like that, college graduates. Some join because it's a family tradition. My daddy was in the Klan, my granddaddy, that kind of thing. Others join for socioeconomic reasons. Perhaps they weren't even racist to begin with, but their area where they work becomes depressed. They get laid off their job. And then next thing you know, an immigrant coming in gets that job, or a black person gets that job because they take less money. And that's when the Klan will come in to those areas and hold a rally and say, you know, the blacks have the NAACP, the Jews have the ADL, nobody stands up for the white man but the Klan. Come join the Klan, we'll get your job back. You can't even put food on your kid's table, things like that. And people are thinking, you know what, he might have a point there. And they go to these rallies and they get sucked into this, you know, propaganda. So it wasn't from a racist background, those particular people.
Okay. There had to have been some moments that got pretty tense during all of this interviewing and attending rallies and that kind of thing.
Yes, I've been very fortunate that most of the people that did talk to me, there were those who would not talk to me, but many would sit down and talk to me after they got over the shock that I was black, because they had no idea that I was black when the interviews were set up. And then there were a couple that resulted in physical altercations. Fortunately, I won, and I took them to court, and I beat them there as well.
Okay. Now, was there a reason that you did not mention your race prior to, or?
Yes, I had my secretary, who was white, call them in advance and tell them that she works for a man who's writing a book on the Klan. Would they consent to sitting down and giving me an interview? I specifically instructed her, do not tell them that I'm black unless they ask. I figured, A, if they knew I was black, they may decline to talk to me. B, if they accepted the invitation, they might have pre-prepared answers for a black interviewer asking the same questions as a white interviewer. So I wanted it to be candid, spontaneous. So once they saw me, then they could decide, well, I'm here now, okay, I'll go ahead and talk to him, or no, I'm not gonna talk to him.
Okay. You did speak with a female Klans member, and she joined when she was in her late 30s.
Right.
What's the female perspective like?
There are plenty of female Klanswomen, or Klansladies as they call them. But you know, they tend to be very subservient to men, and they accept that as their disposition in life, because the Klan not only is racist, but it's also very, very male chauvinistic. You know, women cannot hold the highest of offices. They can hold, you know, things like, you know, recruiter, secretary, treasurer, but not, you know, leader.
Okay. Wow, that is interesting. Now, there have been those who were members of the Klan, but somehow changed their minds and decided to leave the Klan.
Right.
And they gave you their hood and robe.
That's correct.
Wow. What made you accept that?
They were going to throw it away.
Okay.
And I said, no, you know, I would like to have it. And they were curious as to why. You know, why would you want this? This is something, you know, that you hate, and et cetera. So, you know, it is a piece of American history. The Klan is as American as baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet, as the cliche goes. It is a shameful part of our history, but nonetheless, it is part of our history, and you do not throw away and forget about our history. So we want to preserve it. I want to open a museum one day and display a lot of these things that I've collected. I have tons of Klan paraphernalia.
Wow. And you brought some of that.
I did.
Could you show us?
Sure. This is the robe and hood of an imperial wizard.
Okay.
Okay, let me explain the hierarchy of the Klan to you.
Okay.
An imperial wizard is like a president. He oversees all the states in which there is a chapter of the Klan. All right, imperial designates national level.
Okay.
Then a state leader is known as a grand dragon. Grand designates state level, like a governor.
Okay.
All right. You can have a white cotton robe with blue cape, blue stripes, and a blue sash, or a full blue satin robe.
Okay.
All right. That designates the imperial level.
Okay.
Okay. And this is called the Mayoke, or the blood drop emblem. A red circle with a white cross and red blood drop in the center. And the blood drop signifies that they will shed their blood to preserve the white race. And then the black outlines here You see, if you look here, this vertical line, these two angled lines form a K.
Okay.
There are 4 Ks.
Ah.
Stands for Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay.
All right? Green is the grand level.
Okay.
This robe belonged to a grand dragon. Again, you have the Mayoke and a white cotton robe with the green cape, green stripes, green sash. This is another grand dragon's robe from another clan group.
Okay.
This is a full green satin robe. So it means the same thing. You just have
Okay.
your choice of satin or cotton.
Okay. Wow.
And this fellow sported 2 Mayokes, and of course
Okay.
the Confederate flag. Let me just give you a little background on this guy.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, late in my late teens, I heard on the radio that this Grand Dragon had been arrested and charged with conspiring to bomb a synagogue in Baltimore, Maryland. And he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He still ran the Klan from prison. All right.
Wow.
When he got out, he continued running the Klan. Some years later, when I was an adult, he got arrested again. This time he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for assault with intent to murder 2 black men with a shotgun. Now, when you're in the Klan, you don't make enough money to make a living. You know, you get a little stipend from dues, especially, you know, if you're a leader, but not enough to live on. It's just a title, like Boy Scout leader, something like that. Okay, you have to have a day job.
Okay.
While this man was planning bomb by the synagogue and firing his shotgun, etc., his day job, his legitimate day job, was Baltimore City police officer.
Ah.
Okay.
And this is his.
This is his uniform.
His uniform.
Okay.
Okay.
He was not an undercover cop, vice squad joining the Klan. He was a bona fide cop.
Okay.
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 And he later on went on to become one of my best friends.
Wow.
And that's why I have
Wow.
his things that I can lecture on.
Okay. So he's now ex-Klan?
He's ex-Klan.
My goodness. You probably never imagined that you
I
would
never
become-
did because, you know, like I said, I did not set out to convert anybody. I just set out to gather information. But, you know, when you're talking with somebody one-on-one, as we're doing now, no matter how much extreme the other person may believe, you know, an opposing point of view, you will find something in common. And if you focus on those
Absolutely.
things in common, sometimes the things in contrast matter less and less.
Right. And then we become human to each other.
Exactly, precisely, not just some, you know, abstract object of hate.
Right. My goodness. Okay. You have gotten a pretty good start to get your museum going.
It's a start. It's not over, but but it is a start. You know, and the thing of it is this: I'm just a rock and roll piano player. All right. If I can sit down and talk to people who hate me, we all can do it.
That's
We
true.
all can do it, and we all need to do it because this world and our country is getting smaller and smaller. And the more we learn how to communicate with diversity, the better we'll be able to navigate in our own society.
Exactly. Exactly. So how strong is the Klan today compared to when it began with the night rioting and the lynching?
Right. The Klan is not as strong today as it once was. However, it is being revitalized today.
Okay.
They are stepping up their recruitment efforts.
Okay. Do you think it's because we now have a black president?
Absolutely, that's one reason.
Okay.
Because of black president. And second reason is they're trying to attach themselves to a legitimate concern in this country, that being the concern of illegal immigration.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing, though. When everybody's concerned about illegal immigration, but when the Klan uses that term, it's a code word. It's a code word for Latinos, Hispanics, because there are plenty of illegal people in this country from Canada, from the UK, from Eastern Europe, but because they look like the majority of Americans, there's no problem.
Right.
What I keep hearing from people I'm in contact with in the Klan and the neo-Nazi movement is, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. So that's where their concern is. They don't care if their daughters marry some Canadian guy or some guy from England or Wales or Scotland, you know, but you marry somebody from El Salvador or Nigeria or Colombia or Mexico, they have an issue with that.
Okay. Okay. What in your research did you find that Klan members was of a particular socioeconomic status, or did it vary?
Oh, it varied. It
Okay.
varied, you know, immensely. Like I said, some were elementary school dropouts.
Okay.
Others were, you know, went on and graduated college. It all depends upon what, thank you, their upbringing, their environment, and some of their personal experiences, or their surroundings. Because at one time, the Klan was considered an honorable society by white men to join.
Okay. Wow. What about children? Did you find that many of them brought their children into this system?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And that's, why the Klan is still around today.
Okay.
That's why I go around talking about it, because it is being passed on. That ideology is being passed on to a younger generation, because they see, the older generations dying out, and they want to preserve that.
What is their fear? Because I'm thinking that all of this hate it stems from fear.
A lot of it is fear, and a lot of it is guilt.
Okay.
When you have been on the throne of power for so long, for a couple hundred years, and now you're seeing your throne legs being whittled away, and your throne coming down. Because you see, when you and I were in elementary school in this country, the black population in our country was 12%. Hispanics were around 2%. Today, we are still 12%. All right? Back then, whites were like 84, 86%. Today, we are at 12%. Hispanics have surpassed us.
Yes.
They're now at 13%. So
and
now
it
you
will
got 12.
Continue to grow.
Exactly. So you got 12 and 13% non-white. That's 25% non-white. So they're seeing this happen.
Okay.
And they know eventually this is going to happen, and then that. And that's very concerning.
Okay. I'm wondering if they're thinking, because if it's some guilt, then when that shift happens, aren't they thinking, okay, now they're going to try to get us back?
Right, the get even thing.
Wow.
That's part of it. Not everyone. That's part of it.
Okay. What was the most shocking, or maybe not shocking, but surprising thing you learned through your interviews?
I think the most surprising thing was when the first Klansman gave up his robe and quit. Because I was not seeking that.
Right.
And I was just, like I said, gathering information. But when I hit upon that, I thought, this is really interesting. I need to continue down this road and see if any more will do it. And I have I only brought 3 robes with me today, but I have a bunch back home.
Okay.
And, not everybody would give up, okay? But quite a number did. And as a result, in the state of Maryland, I interview people from, like I said, up north, down south, Midwest, and West. But I live in Maryland now. I'm from Chicago originally.
Okay.
But in Maryland, when the leader became friends with me, and Maryland had a large contingency of Klan, when he quit, the whole Klan fell apart.
Wow.
Today, there is no more Ku Klux Klan in the state of Maryland. Okay, now that does not mean that there are no more racists. I mean, they're still there, trust me. They joined the police department and whatever else. But there's no more organized Ku Klux Klan group.
Okay.
And that was pretty surprising to me, because I had never expected somebody who was that entrenched, who had that much hatred in him, to quit.
Wow. That is really something. What do you want readers of your book to get from it?
One of the most important lessons that I have learned, 2 things. One, while you are actively learning about someone else, at the same time, you are passively teaching them about yourself. So always be honest, be truthful, because while you think you're gathering information from somebody else, they are thinking about you. And at the end of the day, you each have to walk away and think about what the other person said. And that's how we bring about change. All right? As long as you're talking to somebody, you're not fighting.
Right.
It's when you stop talking, it's when a fight could erupt, because you're plotting, you're thinking about, well, what's that guy doing, whatever. But as long as you're talking, it's on the table, you're not fighting. And that method can apply to anything, not just racism, any kind of controversy you may have with somebody. Give your opponent a platform. Allow him or her to air their views, regardless of how extreme they may be. They may be so extreme they cut you to the bone. And believe me, I've heard some things that cut me to the bone when I would go to Klan rallies and things like that. But give that person an opportunity to air their views. If you agree, great. If you don't, fine, you challenge them. But you don't challenge them rudely or violently. You ask them to clarify their points of view to make you believe how they believe. All right? When you do things like that, chances are they will reciprocate. When they reciprocate to give you your platform, you make sure you have all your facts together so that you can present your platform in an intelligent and influential manner. Because nobody wants to be wrong. So if you spark something that makes them think, you know, she does have a point there, chances are they will shift in that direction. It may not be an overnight shift. You know, I didn't get these things, you know, the first meeting.
Right.
You know, over a period of time, people are going to shift because nobody wants to be wrong. And that's how we grow.
I think you're absolutely right. We all simply want to be heard.
Right. You don't have to respect somebody's opinion, but you should respect their right to air that opinion.
Exactly, exactly. And probably what helped you get these interviews is that you went in with an element of truth and trust,
Right.
because otherwise they probably would not have spoken to you.
Here's, you know, the breaking point. When these guys would come and meet with me, after they got to know me, you know, they bring their bodyguards and things like that. They would not ask me any questions.
Okay.
If they would talk to me at all. They would simply give me answers or say, I can't talk about that, you know. But they would not ask me for my opinion because my opinion didn't matter. I'm just some black guy. I'm inferior. I know nothing, you know. They have all the answers. But then over a period of time, they would say, well, Daryl, you know, what do you think about? Then I realized, whoa, I've broken some ice here. Now all of a sudden my opinion is valued. They want to know what I think, like I have a brain or something. So that showed progress. And then the conversation opened up. And they would come more and more without their armed bodyguard. They would come to my house. I would go to their homes. We would even go out and have dinner. Two enemies having dinner.
So they would have their bodyguard. You did not have a bodyguard.
I did not have a bodyguard, no.
What was that about?
I didn't think I needed one.
Okay. All right. And I guess, too, you were less threatening that way.
Yeah, exactly. Reverse psychology. I was less threatening. And see, you know, they thrive on fear because they incite fear in people with their mask and hood and robe and all the history behind them. But I think, you know, when they would see that I'm not afraid of them, I can sit there and talk to them, a whole bunch of them or just one or two of them or what, it didn't matter. You know, that creates a respect and a trust, as you put it.
Okay. I've heard many stories about some Klans members, for instance, not believing that the Holocaust happened.
Right.
And you had an interview with a gentleman who believed exactly that. Talk a little
Many
bit
of
about
them
that
do.
one. Okay.
You know, they call it the Holocaust. You know, they call it Holocaust deniers. And they think it's a farce spawned by the Jews to get attention. That's not nothing new. It's been around for a number of years. But I think deep down, they do know it happened.
Okay.
But again, it's denial. And it's a way of recruiting, you know, younger people who may not know, so they can poison those minds. Because their parents, their grandparents fought and lost their lives fighting against Hitler. Their grandparents, their parents, whoever were in World War II, freed some of those hostages and prisoners from those concentration camps. So they know it existed. But for somebody born generations later who may not know, they can brainwash them.
Okay. Wow. So how long did it take you to write the book? How much research? How many interviews?
Oh, a number of interviews. And, you know, I'm still in contact with many of these people and meeting new ones. But I think overall, it took me about 3 years to write the book.
Okay.
And a couple of years to find a publisher. But during those couple of years, I would add more and more to the book.
Okay.
Because, you know, my book is the first book written by a black author who sat down and had dinner with Klan members. And a lot of publishers, you know, did not want to touch it. You know, we can't sell that. You know, that's not right. And, you know, we kept getting all these rejection letters, my literary agent,
Okay.
you know, that would say, oh, we enjoyed Mr. Davis's story. It's very well written. However, it does not fit our agenda at this time, or it's not politically correct. We got one rejection letter that said, we are a nonfiction publishing house. Please send us nonfiction.
Okay, okay. So is there a plan at all to write a second book?
Yes, I think I'll write a sequel to this.
Okay.
And I also have some other ideas, you know, non-race-related ideas, you know, for books that I want to pursue.
Okay. And so this was your first book?
It is.
Wow. So what method did you use? Computer, old-fashioned typewriter?
No, computer.
Okay.
Yeah, Microsoft Word.
Okay, very good. Was there ever a moment where you said to yourself, or where you had doubts about writing the book? Oh, maybe I shouldn't, that kind of thing.
No,
Okay.
never. I mean, once my mind is made up, I will see it through to the end.
Okay. Now, when you were growing up, you really grew up overseas, correct?
Correct. A good portion of my formative years.
Okay. And did not see much racism overseas?
Overseas, I did not see hardly any.
Okay.
My parents were in the Foreign Service, so I grew up as an American Embassy brat. And back in the early 60s when I was in elementary school, you get assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you come back home here to the States for a year, and then get reassigned overseas again for 2 years, that kind of thing. Overseas, I was in international schools. My classes were filled with Nigerians, Italians, Russians, French, German, Japanese. Whoever had an embassy in those countries, all their kids went to the same school.
Okay.
That's how I grew up.
Okay.
Today, we call that environment, we call that multicultural. But that term did not exist back then. But it was the norm for me.
Right, it was just the way it was.
Exactly. But at the same time that I was being quote unquote multicultural, my peers back home here in my own country were either going to newly integrated schools or still segregated ones.
Right, and I remember that.
And there was not the amount of diversity that we have today in the classroom. So I was already predisposed. I was living 20 years in the future when I was a kid.
That's a good
Because
way
that
of
was
looking at that.
yet to come to our country.
Yes.
My first experience, to show you how naive I was, my very first experience with racism, we were back here from being overseas. We were back here for a year. We were living in Belmont, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. And I was one of 2 black kids in the entire school, myself in 4th grade, 1968, and a little girl in 2nd grade, little black girl in 2nd grade. So I didn't see a whole lot of her.
Okay.
All of my friends were white, 4th and 5th graders. My guy friends, many of them were members of the Cub Scouts, and they asked me if I wanted to join. So I joined the Scouts. On Scout Day, I was the only black scout in the area. On Scout Day, we had a march from Lexington to Concord, Massachusetts, to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. And walking down this parade route with my fellow Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Cub Scouts, and the Brownies, I was the only black scout in this march.
Okay.
And I began getting pelted with rocks and bottles and debris from the street
Wow.
by white spectators over on the sidewalk, kids and adults alike. I assumed it was kids and their parents. But having never had any kind of experience like this before, and my being naive, I just assumed that somebody over there didn't like the Scouts.
Okay.
I didn't realize that I was the only Scout getting hit until my den mother, my pack leader, and my Cub master came back in the line and huddled over me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger.
Wow.
I kept saying, well, why? Why are they, hitting me? And they didn't answer the question. It's kind of like, rushing me along.
But it was because you were black.
Exactly.
Wow. Interesting dialogue. Again, the book is called Clandestine Relationships, A Black Man's Odyssey in the Ku Klux Klan. Now, what we would like to do now is talk a little bit about your music. Again, you graduated from Howard University.
That's correct.
And you majored in jazz, but you've played all types of music. Jazz, country and Western, and that's a rare thing. When I think of a black man in country and Western, I guess the first person that pops into mind is Charlie Pride. Right. And
I know him too.
Yeah, oh, do you?
I've met him.
Okay. And Zydeco.
Right.
Okay. And so you have your own band, correct? I do. Okay. And you have also worked with some famous people. Tell us about that.
Well, my biggest hero, Chuck Berry, the man who invented rock and roll.
Okay.
I've been playing piano on and off with him for about 31 years.
Wow.
I don't do all his gigs, but I do a number of them.
Okay. How did you actually get into the music business, becoming a professional musician?
Well, up until I was about 17 years old, until I was about a junior in high school, I wanted to be an espionage agent.
Wow.
I was fascinated with James Bond.
Okay.
And I also wanted to be a computer programmer at the same time. And each vocation was pulling with equal force. So I couldn't go either way.
Okay.
And I couldn't be both. Today you can be both because they have cyber spying, but that term didn't even exist. So I thought about people that I admired a lot.
Okay.
And 2 names came to mind, Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley. And what was it about them that I admired was the fact that they had made millions upon millions of people happy with their music, people that they would never even meet. I thought, that's pretty cool. Maybe I should go into music.
Okay.
So I didn't play, but I started out late in life. And since I liked their music, I started off playing rock and roll.
Okay. So were you in the right place at the right time? Because sometimes it can be a difficult thing for a musician to make a living as a musician.
My parents and I went round and round and round. They did not want me to major in music. Daryl, you can minor in it, you can play on weekends, but get yourself a job you can make a living at and have a secure future.
Okay. So what are some of your favorite styles of music? Or is that hard to do?
It's hard, hard to box it because I was trained in many different styles and I love many different styles.
Okay.
And whatever style makes somebody happy is what I want to play.
Okay.
And people will hire me to do different things.
Okay. I think I would like to go into now to listen to some of your cuts. And your latest CD is called Greatest Hits.
Right.
And the first cut on that is called I'm a Boogeyman.
And that's my tribute to Boogie-woogie music.
Okay.
It's also an original piece.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, let's listen to a little bit of that.
Okay.
Boogeyman, what motivated you to write this piece?
I wanted to write songs that were a tribute to the music that was created in our country. In our country, I wrote some country westerns, some blues, some zydeco, some doo-wop, boogie-woogie, rock and roll, jazz, gospel even.
Okay. With boogie-woogie music, you just cannot keep still. You have to move.
You cannot, and that's why I admire Chuck Berry so much because we think of people like Martin Luther King and many others of his contemporaries who worked very hard, even gave their lives to bring white adults and black adults together. Chuck Berry and his contemporaries, Elvis, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, through their music, they brought white kids and black kids together because, those theaters were segregated. But when that music started playing, they could not sit still. They bounced up and began dancing in the aisles together for the first time in the history of this country. The cops were called in and shut down the show.
Amazing, amazing. Now let's listen to the second cut from the CD, and it's entitled Leave Me Alone.
And this is a blues that I wrote.
Okay. Who did you want to leave you alone?
I was just thinking in terms of commerciality. That's all.
Okay.
Bring them on.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe there was something behind that one. But that's a nice tune, too. So the first one was Boogie. And this one is blues.
Right.
Okay, what's the difference between the two?
The feel. Okay. Blues is kind of laid back, and boogie-woogie is more up front.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, gotcha. All right, let's listen to one more cut called Broad-Minded.
Which is a little play on words. Now, broad-minded is rock and roll was created out of forging blues and boogie-woogie and country.
Oh.
So it's like right up front.
Gotcha. All right, let's listen to that one.
Well, I went to school and earned a college degree. I've been around the world to see what I can see. Come to find out that I only like one thing, to have lots of women and never buy a ring, 'cause I'm broad-minded. Broad-minded. I got broads on my mind. Broads on his mind. I just think about women, think about them all the time. Broad-minded, he's broad-minded. They can be a redhead, a blonde, a brunette.
Okay, it's hard to sit still for that one too. That's really a neat one. Now, earlier before sitting down with this interview, we had you to play something for us and we recorded that. So I'd like to get into that a little bit. And you basically talk a little bit about the music and then you play some examples for us. And in the medley, you talk about meeting the Klansmen.
Right.
And how that relates to music and Jerry Lee Lewis. So what I'd like to do now is for us to take a look and to take a listen.
As I was telling the Klansmen, Jerry Lee Lewis learned from the same place that I did, black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. Blues is the root music of all music created right here in our own country, the United States. This is a little sample of the blues. Now, probably what most people are more familiar with Jerry Lee Lewis is his rockabilly style and rock and roll style that came right out of boogie-woogie from the great black boogie-woogie piano players like Pine Top Perkins, Johnny Johnson, Meadlux Lewis, Pete Johnson, Albert Ammons. That was the core of rock and roll, what I play behind Chuck Berry and many of the other great rock and rollers. People like Little Richard, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, all cut their teeth on this.
Now, when you were in that bar playing this music and the Klansman, and you didn't realize he was a Klansman at the time, he was just wowed by you. Do they get the sense that blacks were not knowledgeable about music or something?
We have to understand that black music was not played on white radio stations back in the day. So their only contact with it was hearing a white artist do it. And they would perceive that the white artist doing it invented it. Elvis invented rock and roll. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. We're not realizing that Elvis got it from black people.
Right.
So that's why he was amazed that by the time black music was being played on the radio, okay, boogie-woogie, old rock and roll, black people had moved on from that. You know, they were now doing, you know, Motown, you know, the Supremes, you know, Marvin Gaye, and so you weren't hearing that rock and roll, rockabilly, you know, where it started.
Gotcha. Wow, interesting. Any musicians in your family?
Me.
You're
That's
it.
it. I'm
Okay.
it.
And your parents begged and please don't do it. Please
Yes,
don't
they
do
did,
it.
yeah.
Okay. Do you ever think about doing the 007 thing now?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Okay, okay.
One day they're going to have a black 007.
Yes.
Okay, and that'll be me.
That will be you.
I mean, you know, for my money, the best James Bonds were Roger Moore and Sean Connery.
Exactly, exactly. So have you done gospel, any gospel music? Okay, okay. Is there a style that's more difficult to play than the other?
I think it involves, you know, what you're passionate about. You know, if you're
Okay.
passionate about something, it's easier to you.
Okay, okay. And obviously you did not do what I did. I took piano when I was younger and stopped, and now I regret it. And just watching you play, I'm just so fascinated.
It's never too
by
late to
it.
go back.
Never too late to
That's
go
right.
back.
I started out late in life.
Okay, okay. Well, how old were you when you started?
17.
Okay,
I'll be 54 next month.
okay. Wow. So, did you start to learn to play the piano when you went to Howard?
My junior year of high school,
Okay.
I had friends who I couldn't be in band because I didn't know how to play anything. But my friends who were in band would show me things, and I would learn by ear, and I would
Okay.
practice and practice. I went out and bought books, taught myself how to read music. So when I went to Howard University, I had to audition. And fortunately, I passed the audition. But I had a lot of bad habits, you know, wrong fingering, that kind of thing.
okay,
So I
okay.
had to like retrain myself to use the right fingers.
Gotcha.
And then once I graduated, sometimes I'd revert back to my old habits.
Okay, okay. So while you were in school, did you have weekend gigs?
Once I learned how to play better, yes,
Okay,
I did.
Okay, all right. And your professors encouraged that?
They not encourage the music that I played. They encouraged me to play.
Okay.
But you know, my degree is in jazz, and I love jazz. But a lot of my teachers, you know, my jazz, you know, yet I also had classical training as well.
Okay.
And the two, you know, didn't kind of intertwine. But my jazz teachers were purists, as were my classical teachers.
Okay.
So they considered me to more or less be a prostitute. I was selling myself by playing rock and roll and blues.
Back to your book, because I'm just so fascinated by it. Did you have any preconceived notions when you went into this?
I never expected anybody to quit, but I already knew a lot about the Klan because
Okay.
I self-educated myself with all the books that I bought. And so I knew what to expect from them. I knew how they felt. I knew what they believed. I went in knowing as much, if not more, than most of the Klan people that I interviewed.
Oh, no, that's
Okay?
interesting.
Oh, yeah, because you know, if you're going to deal with something like that, you want to be armed. I don't mean with a weapon,
Right.
but I mean with knowledge. You know,
Right.
information is power.
Okay.
And when they saw that I knew as much as they did or more, they had a great deal of respect for me. And as a matter of fact, quick story, an exalted cyclops, which means a district leader,
Okay.
had been promoted to great titan, which means county leader. He was too embarrassed to ask his grand dragon, state leader, or imperial wizard, national leader, what his new duties were. He called me
Wow.
because he knew that I knew.
Wow.
Okay?
That's something.
So that's, what I'm talking about, the respect. You go in there knowing more than the person you're talking with. And so I didn't have any preconceived notions, but I was caught off guard when one of them quit. And that threw me for a loop.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that you attended a rally.
Many.
What was
Still
that?
do.
What was that like? Oh, and you still do?
When I have time, yes.
What is that like? Okay, wait. They let you in?
Sometimes I was invited. Now, if it's
Okay.
if it's on public property, then you can go. You can go. Anybody can go. If it's on public property.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
If it's on private property, you have to be a guest.
How nervous were you, especially when you went to the ones on private property where you had to be invited in?
Well, I wasn't nervous at all because I was invited. I mean,
Okay.
there were some people who opposed my being there.
Okay.
All right. But if the leader invited me, then they have to follow the leader.
Okay. What types of things went on?
Well, they'd light the big cross on fire and parade around in their robes and hoods and salute it and shout white power and talk about the need to maintain the purity of the white race and white womanhood. They were against miscegenation, and that blacks are responsible for all the drugs in this country, and on all these kinds of things.
Okay. Wow, it's amazing that they would believe that. So when they would say certain things, what kind of feelings would go through you?
It was a quandary of feelings. I would feel anger, I would feel sadness, I would feel bitter, all these things happening at once. But I had to keep myself in check and remind myself, this is why I'm here. I'm writing a book. I want them to say these things if this is what they feel. I want the truth to come out of them until I can take notes. Furthermore, they invited me. So I need to respect that fact.
Okay. So basically, do you think we will always have Klan groups?
No, I foresee a day, perhaps not in our lifetime, but that will fall by the wayside. It'll be something else.
Okay,
Because there's always rivalry about something.
that's true.
But I think the color thing is getting better, but it still has a long way to go.
Okay,
But I do think that one day that will fall off, yes.
okay. In another few generations or
Yes.
so. Okay. So you talked earlier about the possibility of writing a second book. How different will that book be, or would it be some of the same, or have you even thought that far through yet?
Well, I have a few different topics I want to write on, but the one that you talk about, the sequel to clandestine relationships, some of it will be similar, but I also want to interview some of the same people who are still around,
Okay.
as well as some of the new ones. Now that we've had a black president, we need to get that perspective.
Right.
Has it changed their views? What do they think? Where do they think it's heading? Do they want to continue down this path if they're still in? How does it affect those who are out? Things like that, because I think it's important, that I give the reading audience, a new perspective as well, since our country has changed. And that brings me to the topic of Black History Month.
Okay.
I think now, I've been saying this for a long time, and there are those who would disagree with me, which is fine. But I think it's time now that we take Black History Month and integrate it into where it belongs,
Okay.
which is American history. There was a time when we needed Black History Month
Right.
because we had no Black history being
Right.
taught.
Right.
We fought hard to get something. First thing we got was Negro History Week. We fought harder, and we finally got a whole
Got a
month.
month.
All right? But now, what are we going to do in the future? Are we only going to talk about President Barack Obama during the month of February? It's time that we integrate that.
Okay.
We don't stop being black after February.
Right.
March is Women's History Month. You don't stop being a woman after March. Women have contributed to the fabric of this country. And what is happening is, subliminally, we are brainwashing now, at this point, little black kids as well as little white kids into thinking that there were only a handful of black people in this country that ever did anything. Because every February we learn about the same half a dozen black people. Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, George Washington Carver, Booker T. Washington. Oops, guess what? We're out of time. We did our black thing. Let's go on.
Okay.
And we
now,
never revisit
now it's
them.
March 1st. Let's move on.
Let's move on. But yet we study Benjamin Franklin, Eli Whitney, Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, all these people all year long. And we never forget what their contributions were.
Right.
But in June, you ask somebody, some kid black or white. So who was Harriet Tubman? Let me think here. Oh yeah, she was that woman who didn't give up her seat on the bus. They've already got it confused with Rosa Parks because it's not being reinforced after February.
Right. Wow, that makes sense. So do you think, so you will plan a sequel for this book and then perhaps other books?
Yes.
Okay. What topics?
I want to do one on death and how people grieve over death and how they perceive death.
Wow, where did that come from?
I like taboo things. Race was a taboo thing, right? The Klan's taboo.
Okay.
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 And many, people don't know quite how to approach death. So I want to get different perspectives.
Okay.
And also, there've been a lot of books on child abuse, and that's a topic that really needs to be addressed because
Most definitely.
it can never. Not enough can be said about how to prevent it and things like that. But there's also been some forgotten people, those who've been accused falsely of abusing children.
Okay. Yes.
And then later on it came out, the child lied for whatever reason, in a custody battle, or the teacher did not give them a good grade,
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And how that has stigmatized those individuals, him or her, the rest of their lives. Because being accused or being arrested for child abuse is a little different than falsely than say being arrested for drunk driving or
Right.
speeding or
Right.
some other minor crime.
Okay.
So there's that group of people.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
for being
much. I
with
appreciate
us.
it. Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed it. Now, Daryl has a website if you're interested in going to it, and you should be interested in that. So if you want to find out more about author and musician Daryl Davis, you can visit his website at www.daryldavis.com, and that's spelled DARYLDAVIS, daryldavis.com. As Wolfman Productions, Daryl's publicist, has stated, for over 10 years, Daryl Davis has walked on the edge with one foot dangling over the precipice. His stories of surprise meetings with the Klan has the suspense of Hitchcock, keeping audiences riveted to their seats. His book and lectures, filled with exciting encounters and amusing anecdotes, leave the reader and audience feeling empowered to confront his own prejudices and overcome their fears. In the end, they will seek and find a common ground to help forge peace with their most unlikely adversaries. I'm Celeste Evans. Until next time, stay informed and stay aware.